What's happening, guys? Welcome back to Tokimotive. I'm going to keep it nice and brief at the start here, just because I've got a lot crammed into this video and it's run quite long, but by the end of this video the motor is back together. So I'm talking sump, pickup, upper intake manifold, supercharger, most of the stuff on the front, pretty much everything before I'm ready to start putting it in. So I'm gonna let you get into the video and I'll see you at the end. Alright guys, well, next thing I'm deciding to do so that I can actually turn the motor upside down without stuff wanting to dribble out, whatever is in there to dribble out. I'm gonna start putting part of the plenum back on, which if you haven't already, doesn't matter whether you got the plastic ones or not, I recommend getting the steel intake gaskets, because the plastic ones, they tend to go brittle, the chunk falls away, and then water starts leaking down into the motor, and that's when you start chewing out bearings and stuff like that. It's just bad news, you don't want it. So spend a little bit extra and get yourself a metal plenum gaskets. It's gonna save your motor in the long term. But comes with these little fucking clip-in plasticky doos for the front and back of the motor. I like little fucking rubber sealy fucking do thing. They've got little rubber dowels on them. So they're pretty hard to mess up how you put them in. And I think everything, much like the heads, it's just flipped of how they sit. So I'll start putting this together. Once again, it's not going to be a huge stress of this because they're plastic sealing surfaces, but just give your surfaces that you're sealing against a wipe down with your prep wash and go ham, start putting it back together. So I'm going to do that because Kat gave that piece a nice clean up. She acid dipped it out in the yard. And yeah, I'll chuck this on a time lapse and I'll do that. Alright guys, so you would have noticed where the metal plenum gasket met that orange sort of pop-in seal, I put a bit of RTV, just a blob in each corner, just where the gaskets and those seals join up, just so that nothing can sort of get through that little fucking crack if it decides to. I'm gonna go through, I'm gonna chuck this little doobie fucker on the back of here. It's just a fucking coolant passage through there, so I'll chuck a gasket on it. Still deciding whether I want to put a small smear of RTV, small smear of RTV on both sides of the gasket for there, just to make 100% sure it seals, because that's at the back of the motor, that's fucking underneath the supercharger, it's underneath the lip of the firewall, same with the thermostat. I'm going to make sure as hell that they seal. So I probably will do a small smear of RTV on the faces that aren't looking the greatest. So this in, that on, and I'm probably going to go and chuck that backing plate that houses the rear main seal onto the back of the motor. While I'm here, I figure I may as well, seeing as the sump gasket seals against that, I may as well put it on now if I can get my hands in there. We'll see how we go on that one, but I'll just go and probably just get a screwdriver in behind that and belt that seal out. And I'm thinking for this one, I will probably put a small smear of RTV around the inside when I knock that seal back in, and then assembly lube in the lips of the seal for where the crank rotates around it. I'll paint it with that car stuff to get the gasket to actually stick to the plate, or when I actually slot it up and put it on, because otherwise that one doesn't actually have any dowels on the back, so that one will be a real pain. And of course, cleaning up all the gasket surfaces with the prep wash first as well. So we'll get into that. Last night while I was trying to put the thermostat in is they're meant to have this little kind of like a seal sits over it like that, and it kind of holds it in place because that's a fairly deep notch, and that kind of spaces it up and seals it against the top part of the housing. But the Mace one, the 82 degree thermostat I got, which I do recommend, particularly being a supercharged motor. Supercharger will only put in a certain volume of air. That's why what PSI it shows up on the gauge, let's say you've got what people call a 10-pound pulley and you're only seeing 6 or 7 pound on your boost gauge, that means your motor is more efficient. Letting that through. It's got less resistance. Because pressure is just a force of air against the resistance, and whatever can't get out, that's pressure. Turbo will go to a certain pressure. That's why a more efficient motor, you can make an extra 100 horsepower at the same PSI with a motor that's set up more efficiently. Superchargers, it's always the same amount of air. So the cooler you get the motor running, the cooler you get the air, the more power you make. Because you're still putting the same amount of air in, but it's denser. So the 82 degree thermostat opens a good 10 degrees cooler, which is going to make your motor run better overall. While I'm waiting to go get that seal for the thermostat, I am going to try and put the backing plate on the motor, the plate that's got the rear main seal in it. From the looks of it, the bolts that come with it, they've got like a sort of like a little plastic dowel on them, which what I'm assuming the point of that was at some point to sort of hold the bolt in the hole, which they're long since past doing that. But my guess is that's so they can sit in there, and then you can position your gasket on that, then place it up and bolt it on. So I'm gonna attempt to do something with that and get this actually bolted on because I want to get the sump on. Now I'm going to go ahead and put the oil pickup on and the sump. For your oil pickup, you'll see they have a small O-ring here around them, which these are a nitron or something like that, sort of oil seal, and they're like a special compound designed for it. And you just get a flathead screwdriver underneath it and pick it and pry it off. In your Mace kit of gaskets for the bottom end, you'll have these ones. I'm not sure what these other ones are for exactly. I'm pretty sure one of these is for the sump plug. but you'll have another one of these little nitron or whatever they are O-rings. Just simply pop it over and that's it. You'll notice the other one I pulled off was a lot flatter. They eventually flatten out, that's why you shouldn't reuse them. You can usually get these from your local parts store. They usually have a whole container of them. And when you're buying your new sump gasket, because if you've ever had to do one, changing the sump gasket in one of these in the car is a pain in the fucking ass. You've got to lower the subframe. So, make sure you replace it with an OEM spec metal one, which it's metal with a little rubber seal on it, much like what I put on for the Plenum gaskets. The overall gasket kits are meant to come with just a cork one, and you pay that little bit extra to get the metal one, but they've sent me 2 metal ones. So I'm gonna say they've updated, this was in the pack with all the bottom end gaskets. So I'm gonna say the gasket kits that they use now come with a metal gasket as well, anyway. So you don't necessarily have to buy the second one with the second gasket. So that one there, it's gonna be as quality seal as factory, but I'll go through, sort all this out. Make sure if you've done anything like spun a bearing or turned a lifter, anything that's chewed up a bunch of metal and put filings through the motor, that everything you put back in is thoroughly clean. I sprayed the hell out of this with brake cleaner, I've back flushed it, I've even wire wheeled the outside to kind of clean it up, get rid of some of that old sludge just because I was bored. But make sure you thoroughly flush everything, give your sump a good clean out. I just got all the oil out of it and drowned it in degreaser and gurneyed the living fuck out of it, and just sprayed it out with the air compressor, wiped it out and let it dry overnight. So make sure you get rid of all that metal filings and shit, so it's not going through your new oil pump and through all the new shit in your motor. But I'm gonna chuck this back on a time lapse, put all this stuff together, then we can flip it over and start doing some more stuff. It's nearly back together. Woo! Now, on the front of your motor, you would have noticed if you pulled it apart, well, what I'm going to do anyway, you got these little O-ringed coolant passages. They kind of, I think that's the wrong hole for it, but they kind of slot into these holes, and they use O-rings to seal them. In the mace seal and gasket kit, can't find any O-rings that seem like the right size. So what I'm going to do is, I've got one of your O-ring grab kits. It's basically just a kit with a whole bunch of different sized O-rings. Because it's only coolant, it's nothing like oil or fuel or anything like that. You can pretty well use any sort of O-ring, it's not going to hurt it. So I'll pick these off and then I'll find a suitable size that just fits over. You want it to only just fit, so it's a nice tight seal around the part. So for when it goes in, and it's just got to protrude just slightly. Because this one here is pretty much cooked, it's non-existent. This one's not too bad, but seeing as it's a part, I'll replace them anyway. So I'll chuck this back on a time lapse. I'll get started doing that and start putting some more stuff on the front of the motor. So I went down to Auto 1 and got one of the factory style seals for it. Just kind of sits over the rim of the thermostat. I also noticed in the stuff I got from Mace, this big thick O-ring, which is meant to sit there. That's actually the seal they give you for your thermostat. This seal was like $12. I honestly think either will work, but seeing as I just took a special trip to go get it, I'm gonna run the factory style one. I'll do the same thing, I'll do a light smear of RTV on this surface because it ends up fairly rough looking and pitted, being thermostat housing, they always seem to do it. So I'll sort that out, and I also noticed in the front tensioner pulley part, where you got the little coolant galley that runs through that I put an O-ring on before, it's also the long bit that goes through it also has another O-ring, so I'll clean that up and replace that O-ring with one that I've got here as well while I'm going. So I'll go through, I'll sort that, and then I'll probably put the rocker covers on while I'm going. Trackers on time lapse for all that, and then we'll sort out putting the supercharger on. I'm going to split the intake part off and the throttle body and just replace those gaskets so I know that they are good, fresh and sealed, because it's a MAF car, it runs a MAF, so any leak past the MAF is an issue for the tune. So I don't really want to run that risk, so I'll go through and I'll do those gaskets as well. But we'll get to that in a moment, and we'll start cracking on with sorting these other bits out. So back on a time lapse, just go. Supercharger, I'm going to split it here and take the throttle body off, clean up those gasket surfaces and put them gaskets in. I'll coat it with that tar stuff on both sides as well to make sure that that seals very nicely. So I'll go through, I'll do all that, get that all sorted, supercharger on, and then we'll go on to chucking the harmonic balancer and the last bits and pieces onto the front of it. Replaced all the gaskets on the charger itself. I haven't done the front snout because I'm not servicing the charger this go round. I'll do that one actually on the car because we don't really have the funds to do it at the moment. But the new mace gasket actually has like a rubberized coating around all the actual openings. So I'm not going to put any sort of sealant stuff on that, and you got little O-rings here for your small coolant passage. Just a couple of little notched out bits for them. But yeah, that's the gasket on. I'm just going to put that down on here, and then we'll put all the bolts in loosely and then slowly go around and tighten them all up. I won't rattle gun these down because we want the charger to sit nice and square and flat. Crank down one bolt, it'll sit up or could sit off, and then if you twist the housing of the charger, they can bind your screw thing, bind up on the housing itself. So I'll just go slowly around and tighten them down bit by bit, take my time with it. Alright, now we may as well start on the injectors. In your mace kit you get a full new set of injector seals. They're just like a little O-ring, like so. As you can see, that old one's looking pretty crusty if that focused. You just rip them off like that. I'm going to get a bit more prep wash on a rag, because these are looking pretty gummy. Whole injector, bit of a tidy up, clean out the valley where that O-ring sat. You can see it's nice and shiny. And for your new ones, it's literally just a simple matter of just popping it over like you would a normal O-ring. Just like that. They're a special sort of O-ring. They're designed for fuel. 14 mil, I think. You can usually just go to your local store and buy them in like packs of 20 or so, something like that. That's what I did for when I redid all the injectors in the wagon. So pretty cheap, really. It's got seals in here for both top and bottom. So what you do for that is you got a little clip there that you can just slide off. Oh. Pop your injector out. That sometimes happens. Sometimes it just leaves it behind in the rail. In that case, you just get your screwdriver into the rail and pluck it out like that. These are designed to swell in the presence of fuel. So once they're in service, they seal even stronger. But just pop your little clips off, and it's the same method as the front. If it doesn't come off, you just prise that little O-ring off and then pop the new one straight in over the top. Just whoop, like so. Pop them back in your rail, which will be nice and easy. You take your little clip. There's a couple of little cutouts on the side of the injector that these actually slot over. And just pop it over like that. Easy as. Very, very easy to work with system. So I'm going to go through, I'll time lapse doing the rest of them, and then we'll throw the harmonic balancer on the front of it. Alright, so now comes time for the harmonic balancer. Which to start with, you got this little casing here. It's kind of like a dust cover, but you got a cam angle sensor and you got a crank angle sensor, and that actually reads off teeth on the harmonic balancer. So you can pop your little protective casey do over the front like that. For your balancer, there is a keyway on the crank itself. Sort of locks into there. I can see him, he's just down on the side here. I'll get it kind of close. Line him up. A couple small spins and that's where it is. Alright, and now there are torque specs for this, but I've never found a situation where I can never get them tight enough with a torque wrench. So what I normally do, rattle gun on full noise mode. That's tight. Make sure that everything's all still spinning properly and in alignment. I just give your motor a little crank over. It'll still be easy because you've got no plugs in it. But that feels just fine. Don't go too crazy on it because you've got all that assembly lube in your oil pump. And you don't really want to just push all that through when that's going to help you get oil pressure at the start. Alright guys, I'm going to wrap it up there. If you've made it through to the end, I know it was a long one, but thank you very much. I really hope you enjoyed this one. And yeah, stay tuned for the next one for the L67 stuff. We're very near the end. I didn't go crazy on the filming of putting it back in because I absolutely hated the process, because it's just, I don't like working on V6s in the engine bay. We'll just say that. But anyways guys, like, comment, subscribe, all that good stuff goes a long way towards supporting the channel. You can check out some of my other videos, I'll link some of them below, and my other platforms like Instagram and TikTok, they'll be linked below as well. But I'm going to cut it here because this has already gone way long. but I wanted to just get it all in one video rather than trying to break it into two really short ones. So, anyway guys, I hope you enjoyed, and I'll see you on the next one.